Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I will be reviewing Deadpool 2. Before we begin, I would like to warn you that there will be spoilers in this review. The story of Deadpool 2 is about Deadpool trying to protect a kid as well as a semi-villain named Cable. The story starts off with Deadpool and Vanessa celebrating their anniversary and deciding that they want a child together. Unfortunately for Deadpool, a bunch of assassins are dispatched to quote-unquote kill Deadpool. Unfortunately, Vanessa gets in the way and she ends up getting killed. We then see a depressed Deadpool try and unalive himself, and he does succeed for a moment and sees himself in the afterlife talking to Vanessa, and Vanessa says that his heart isn't ready for death yet. After this, Colossus finds Deadpool's dead body and takes them back to Xavier's mansion. We see Deadpool and Colossus talking about how Deadpool should deal with Vanessa's death. We then get a funny cameo from some of the X-Men, and it was quite cool to see them. Deadpool is now a trainee for the X-Men, and their first mission is to help in a situation where a young boy named Russell has escaped a home for children with mutant abilities. Deadpool tries to calm down the situation, and then he learns from Russell that the people at the home tortured the children, and so Deadpool, rightfully so, thinks that this is very wrong, and he kills one of the people that works there. Because Deadpool killed someone while being a part of the X-Men, he is thrown in a prison for mutants called the Icebox. In the Icebox, they have these special collars that suppress the mutant abilities, and unfortunately for Deadpool, this means that his cancer has returned. We are then introduced to our villain, Cable. Cable is seeking revenge after his family is killed, and the person that killed his family is an older version of Russell, who is named Firefist. Cable travels back in time to where Deadpool and Russell are currently. Cable breaks into the Icebox and tries to assassinate Russell, but Deadpool gets in the way. Deadpool gets in a fight with Cable, and they both get thrown out of the prison during their fight, leaving Russell behind with the Juggernaut. We then return to where Deadpool lives, and we get a montage of him and his friend making up a team called the X-Force, which one of the members includes Domino, and her ability is that she is lucky. Deadpool and X-Force plans to save Russell from Cable, and Russell is in a convoy with the other mutants to be transferred to a different facility. Most of X-Force dies, unfortunately, so it's only Deadpool and Domino that's left to protect Russell. Plans go awry when Cable shows up, and Russell and the Juggernaut escape. The Juggernaut is out now, so this means that the plan to kill Russell has been complicated, and now Cable needs the help of Deadpool. Deadpool and Cable make the deal that if Deadpool cannot change Russell's mind in killing the quote-unquote leader of the home, that Russell was to be killed by Cable. We then go to the home of where Russell was raised, and a battle ensues between Colossus and the Juggernaut. After this, Deadpool manages to get to Russell in time, and the only way that Deadpool tries to talk Russell down is by putting on the collar that suppresses mutant abilities, and sacrifices himself in order to save Russell. What this means is that Deadpool manages to save Russell from becoming a villain, in turn saving Cable's family. Unfortunately for Deadpool, this means that he will die. We then meet up with Deadpool and Vanessa in the afterlife again, and we have quite an emotional scene. And because Cable feels bad, he goes back in time and saves Deadpool from death. This is the end of the story, but we do get some after-credits scenes that add more. The post-credits scenes consist of Deadpool traveling back in time and saving Vanessa, as well as doing many other fun things. The first character I will talk about is of course Deadpool, played by Ryan Reynolds. Yet another fantastic performance by Ryan Reynolds, and again I will say he plays Deadpool perfectly. We get a lot more emotion out of Deadpool this time around, and I really enjoy that. I do like that he is a funny guy, but he does know when to be serious, and his life can be quite tragic at times. He may have a hard time dealing with the emotional aspect of life, but by the end of the movie, he accepts what has happened and is better for it. Overall, I do feel like there was a lot of growth with his character in this movie, and I can't wait to see where his story goes next. Next, I'll talk about Cable, played by Josh Brolin. Now, I'm not sure what Cable really is like in the comic books, and I only really know him from the X-Men 97 TV show, so I'm not sure how accurate this version of Cable is, but I will say I like this version. He's a simple villain at first, because he's on a revenge path, because his family was brutally murdered, and he feels like he should kill the person that killed his family. This is a pretty simple plot for a villain, but it works in this case. It gives purpose to Deadpool in a way, because he's going through a similar situation to Cable, where somebody he loved was killed and he needs to deal with it. By the end of the movie, Cable does end up being a good guy, and I really enjoyed his character overall. The only other character I can think about talking about is Russell himself, played by Julian Dennison. Russell is also on a revenge path because he wants to get revenge on the people that hurt him, and he feels like the only way to do this is by killing them. He kind of has a similar story to Deadpool as well as Cable, except he doesn't have to deal with the loss of a loved one. Honestly, there's not much else to say about Russell, because he's just an angry teenager who wants revenge. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's all his character really is. There are plenty of good things about this movie, but I'll only point out the stuff that I personally really enjoyed. I absolutely love the action in this movie. There's a lot more action in this movie than there was in the first one, and I think that's because of the higher budget. There's a lot more slow motion scenes, as well as just good choreography all around. I personally really liked the fight between Colossus and the Juggernaut, because it was so cool to see such big people fight each other like that. I personally like the X-Force scene, just because it was funny the way some of them died. It was also funny for the movie to build these characters up, like they were going to be this epic team, just for all of them to be killed in the stupidest way possible. And it was just really funny. I also really liked the cameo from Brad Pitt in this scene, and it was totally unexpected for him to be the guy who played the Vanisher. I'm going to put this in the positive section just because it was a really cool scene, but I'm also going to question this as well. I personally really liked the cameo from some of the X-Men. The characters that we got to see were Cyclops, Storm, Nightcrawler, Quicksilver, Beast, and Charles Xavier. A pretty cool cameo, right? Well, the nerd side of me was screaming, because they were the younger version of the X-Men, not the older version. So this wasn't like the Halle Berry Storm or the Patrick Stewart version. It was the James McAvoy and Zoe Kravitz versions of the X-Men. You would think it's no big deal, but in my opinion, this is kind of a weird idea, because could this mean that Deadpool was to be set in the 80s, not the 2000s? Yes, I'm being nitpicky here, but it's cool to see and just think about the idea of that, because we're never explicitly told what year this movie is set in, but obviously no, like we saw with Deadpool with a newer version of an iPhone. So it wouldn't really make sense for the X-Men from the X-Men First Class to be in this movie. Yes, I'm being weird about this, but it's just cool to theorize. There are two issues that I have with this movie, and I'll compile them into one issue. My issue with this movie is the humor, actually. The movie is funny, yes, but I wouldn't say it's as funny as the first one. I found myself laughing less throughout the movie, and I also noticed that a lot of the jokes would not be understood by the average audience, making this Deadpool movie less appealing to the average audience. For me, it's fantastic, because I understand all of the jokes of superheroes, but if I had my parents watching, they wouldn't understand a lot of the jokes, because they're just not into superheroes. That's what I liked about the first movie, was the fact that the humor was for everyone, and I feel like that took a back seat in this movie. The other part of the humor was the fact that I can remember one scene specifically at the end of the movie, where in my opinion the humor wasn't landing. The part of the movie where Deadpool was dying, he kept on pretending to die, and then he would come back to life, and in my opinion it's funny the first time, but after the third time he does it, it's like, okay, the scene is dragged on for long enough. I'm not disappointed in the humor, I just wish that there was more of a selection of humor, rather than it just being for specific people, especially when the first movie had more variety in their jokes. Overall, this was another fantastic movie. Is it as good as the first Deadpool movie? I would say no, but that doesn't take away from the fact that there are still great emotional scenes, and yes, some of the humor does land pretty well. It's a good story about love, as well as accepting the fact that one day you will lose someone that you love, and it also shows how to deal with that emotional pain. For a superhero movie, it handles the emotion very well, and I would highly suggest this movie if you're into emotion as well as great action. Thank you all so much for watching, and see you in the next video.